Next up, we have Leadership Dialogue, Investing in an AI-Ready Workforce. And I'll invite the panelists to come on up to the stage. Naveen Durga Prasad will be moderating this conversation with Sindhu Gangadhar and Radha Ramaswamy Basu. Naveen. Naveen is here from the Bay Area, and again, a cherished member. It's such a pleasure to have you here, Naveen. Thank you. And Naveen built his first limited chat agent in 4th grade, so he's eminently qualified to have this conversation. And I invite you to take the stage. And he'll be. How can you sit down after that?
Hello. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is an exciting topic. I'm just going to make some statements, ask you a few questions to ponder about while we have this discussion. Payroll still happens to be the largest expense in most organizations today, right? And in this new world of AI, there are some exciting possibilities that can open up with just about every person that's on your payroll today, right? You could have, translate bots that help bridge gaps in project management meetings. You could have things generated by people that can benefit the wider audience beyond their inherent capabilities. There's just so many ways. I mean, we deployed AI in early 2021 for many of these reasons across 400 employee team, and we saw some fantastic results. I'm just curious here in the audience, how many of you have been encouraging your teams to be using AI? Raise of hands. And how many here have made mistakes with AI? I think the number of mistakes is a great indication of how you'd innovate, and so just something that I'd encourage people to think about as we have this discussion. Radha and Sindhu and I were talking, there's this whole line in the sand that's been drawn with traditional AI, and what we are seeing right now with things moving more towards generative and general purpose as well, eventually. As the both of you just introduce yourselves, could you also add, where are you applying AI at the workplace? What's changing for you in your teams? Radha, will you?
Hello?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Well, after that really exciting Quilt.ai, the videos and of course, wisdom from Naveen earlier, I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, we better liven this up. It's also into the afternoon. So I asked myself, I've been asked 3 questions, not asked myself. First one is, why in the heck are you still working? You should have retired about 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And our AI company, iMerit, is about 8 years old in AI. And the second question I've been asked is, will the job of the CEO still be there? Is it going to go away? It's not just every job, but the job of the CEO to start with. And the third, I will get to. So, in all of these years, over 45 years of being in the tech industry, I think this is definitely, and Sindhu, you haven't been around that long, but it's the most exciting time. Because I can tell you, I gave up being a developer a long time ago, but now, Copilot and everything else, I can do development. If my IT doesn't work, I can have a nice IT Copilot to fix it. I can even code it to do that. But I think the most exciting thing about AI and the workforce that we're going to talk about is how young people from very different, diverse backgrounds low income, may not even have had all the education that you think is needed in order to be in technology, right? So they could be from different diverse backgrounds, from the hinterland of different countries, especially India and the US, that's where we work with the most. And the amazing thing is that they can be and become part of the global AI workforce. And it's in seeing this, so our young people are now, we used to say they were born digital. It used to be the digital divide, yesterday, so traditional. Then we talk about born mobile, and now we're talking about born AI. And I have to share one little story. So as I said, this particular company I've had founded and run. Companies before that, there were tech companies that took public. And then this one is 8 years old in AI. So one of the first things somewhere maybe 3 or 4 years into it, I was asked by one of our young people, we have a few thousand employees, and the average age of the company, you have to understand, is 24.8. You would not know that looking at me. In fact, I've had a very sassy young man say to me, Dee, if it were not for you, we would be 23.65. And I was like, how the heck did you get into that, you know? But interesting thing was, you know, this one lady made the observation, you still use email? This was a few years ago. And more recently, I was asked the question, I'm sorry if the Google folks here, Shalini, I know you're here. Do you still use search? And these are the kinds of questions we're getting and people are learning. And the last thing I would say is, and I know Cindy's going to talk about different applications. We happen to be mostly in autonomous mobility, medical AI, and generative AI. But I want to take the example of medical AI. I would never have imagined, even 3 years ago, that we could take young people without any strong medical backgrounds, and we could actually use experts, a whole slew of experts and cardiologists, radiologists, and have them become, in some ways, the human co-pilot, expert co-pilot, and in other ways, and I use just co-pilot as an example, that is coded in to be able to skill these young people, to be able to work with, like, training of surgical instruments or cancer cell categorization. So to me, AI is about creating jobs, but creating jobs that are very different from what we're used to. So that's what I would start with.
Thank you.
I think rather you beautifully summarized and narrated how you've kind of firsthand witnessed the transformational change that all of us are witnessing firsthand, right? Now, I just come from Mumbai and from one of the largest tech conferences that we've been having, Naveen, NTLF. It's the NASSCOM Technology Leadership Forum. And just to kind of give you a little bit of color on the kind of use cases that we've been seeing over the last 2 days, right? Which kind of goes into the use cases, rather you also talked about. I mean, today, India is a country where you have, over 19,000 dialects, right? Or even more, right? And over 200 official languages that are spoken. And today we have AI solutions like Sarvam.ai or Krithrim.ai, or if you look at the likes of Observe.ai, or even for that matter, Fractal's Kaleido.ai, really translating how can to your point on AI being this great equalizer, right? How we are making sure that today anybody in any language can kind of understand and use very specialized agents that can do anything, right? And if I look at my 15-year-old coming and saying, hey, I use ChatGPT to kind of summarize everything that I need to do in my assessment, can you just have a human just check over it if it's looking good? This is mainstream today as we speak. So, but because I was also listening to some of the earlier sessions on actual usage when it comes to advertising and all of that, today, some of the use cases are even more deeper, right? If you just look at a pharmaceutical company, typically when you're looking at vaccines production, right? Every vaccine today has over several thousands of components that go into a vaccine production. And the kind of use cases that we are seeing today where even if one of those components are not available, very quickly finding out what was an equivalent component that would match. Also kind of figuring out, do I run into supply chain challenges? Do I run into cost challenges? And all of this going across multiple domains and kind of deciding, okay, this is a possible component that could be substituted, but still making sure that we can get that component on time, on the right price point, and with the same effectiveness, all of that. So this is what is happening today. I mean, pretty much can only relate to what you said, rather, AI being this great equalizer from a 5-year-old speaking any language to a very sophisticated use case that we are seeing. But at the same time, also a little word of caution, right? I mean, if you just see some of these examples, you can see how powerful it is, which means the data that we use to train these models, right? This is where I think a lot of the emphasis needs to be. And this is where we need to put in a lot of thought, the domain expertise that need to be there, because otherwise things can very easily get out of control.
Yeah, I would say the quality of data and the trust and safety of the models that you're training as you're doing the product. And then actually being able to monitor it and look at how the models perform, something that I learned in a computer vision model, exposing the model. And exposing the model, really? So, yeah, and that's a generative AI. That's an LLM feature or a language model. So, but you're exposing the model of the vision model, so you're in the multimodal space. I wanted to add one thing to what you said, which is also an experience we went through. So as I said, we have a lot of young people from very different backgrounds. And we started working in an area of training models in precision agriculture. And so we had a number of people who came from a farming background, and we had with them agronomists and agronomists who were German agronomists, because these models have to be trained for different areas. And the whole idea is to train models so that you can do detection of a crop that may start to fail at a very small number of crops, just small crops of that size, and catch it before it spreads to the whole field. So when we actually started working on this 4 years ago, it seemed like, wow, precision agriculture, that's pretty exciting. Wonder how it'll... But now, that is part of AI at the edge of tractors, whether it's a John Deere or whoever it is, and putting that sensor and actually being able to look at many different things in the field. I bring this up as an example because then that also, besides creating jobs, the application is essentially 2 or 3 times food production that happens. Crops can be, multiple crops can be grown and areas like that. So I think that's what, for me, brings AI to kind of the societal applications, responsible AI, and creating jobs.
And what I'm hearing from what both of you are saying is that in the workplace or with the people that we can bring together, there's now a sort of a stretchability of skills. You could bring people with diverse backgrounds, with diverse knowledge, different layers of skills, and be able to do things that could get complemented by AI. And what are things that we should consider when applying this at the workforce? I mean, what can go wrong?
What can go wrong?
Yes.
Oh, lots of things. If you only knew bruises and scars. In fact, I think we grow up in AI on bruises and scars, starting with predictive or traditional AI, now more into generative AI. I never thought that I would be talking about traditional AI, for sure. Something that we've been talking about young people from different backgrounds, at least I have been. But I want to take it to the other side also, to the experts, where you can have corpus creation. We have projects in which we do corpus creation in the generative AI space. We could have 50 to 60 PhDs in mathematics, philosophers, scientists who are coming on, different kinds of scientists, and they are actually creating the corpus for a particular purpose-built application. That is the distillation of a large language model. So if you've been following, like we've all been, or at least heard of this, DeepSeek, and how deep are we seeking things within us? This is what somebody asked me about 2 days ago. They were talking about mental wellness. But DeepSeek basically is about distillation of large language models, mixture of experts. These are some of the things. So when you start to build both on the corpus creation and your training from data from the past to be built predictive AI models, and you bring these things together, you can actually create a lot of differences in the way people approach things. And I think that we talked earlier about the quality of data. The kinds of problems you can run into, at least we have run into, is sometimes you start with the model with the quality of data that might be at 30 or 40%, and you don't know where you're going to end up. And you don't want to be in autonomous mobility. You don't want to be in medical AI, certainly in those things, and have any accuracy that's less than 98 or 99% because you're, the kinds of things you're doing. So I think one of the things that as we have, somebody has asked me about David and Goliath in AI. We're certainly, and they asked me if we were a David, and I said, no, we're like a Jhansi Rani. We're not a David. So, but we're small compared to the large guys. What happens is that how do you, especially in generative AI, in predictive AI, we know how to run profitable companies and grow companies and things like that. But in generative AI, especially when we go into these purpose-built applications and you start to deploy them, and you want to get to these kinds of accuracies, how do you then grow the company being very profitable? So this is part of, you ask, what are the kinds of things we run into? Yeah. These are some of the things, and skilling people. Skilling with AI is a whole art and a science in itself.
Actually, that's a good segue. We're running out of time. Maybe could you, Sindhu, talk a bit more about skilling and what are you seeing as challenges? What should we shift in education to get what we need?
Yeah, I think maybe just building on what you said, rather in terms of there are a lot of things that can go right, but there are also many things that can go wrong, right? Because if you just take a developer, right, who's using GitHub Copilot. Today, everybody says, almost 50% productivity with GitHub Copilot. And yes, indeed, you can kind of generate 80% of the code. But if that code is not optimally kind of tested through, then you would end up running that code on a heavily used infrastructure, right? And think about what that translates into when it comes to all the sustainability targets that we have. So there's so many things that where I'd go back to the point that you need to have domain expertise, no matter what. You told, look at medical data, and you have non-medical people looking at data. But I still believe the human in the loop becomes super important. That's one. Not to forget that. The second thing, which I think is also very pertinent, is recently there was a survey. I mean, we have a lot of techies in India, and the survey was about how much do you trust AI, right? And 80% of the people said they trust the data and the results from generative AI, 80%. And that, which is great, because, I mean, we want to embrace
It's also
technology.
scary, Sindhu,
But at
because
the
of
same
the
time,
hallucination.
I mean,
yeah.
so think about young kids who kind of use it from day one, right? And so if you're training the models on the wrong data sets again, kids grow up kind of completely biased, right? And, or if I look at an example like, you talked about skills, but maybe one part of looking at skills is also how do you recruit people. And today, if there's so much of bias in how you put out a job requisition, for example, then there's only few people who would apply for those roles. And today with AI, of course, you can kind of make sure that those job requisitions that you post out there don't have that kind of bias towards certain genders, right? So I think, so I'd go back to my point, it's really about the right data sets, making sure that you have domain experts, and not to forget everything around deep fakes and cyber threats, right? So going back to your question on the right skills, I think today it's very clear, and I think the earlier presenter also talked about computer science is out. I'd say it's not out, however, today we are hiring for skills rather than degrees, right? So it's no more about how many degrees you have, but do you have the right skills? And a lot of what we are looking for in people is that mindset of being able to adapt, the resilience, because on Jan 27th, we had DeepSeek, probably the next one is right around the corner, right? So, so the pace at which things are happening is so fast, but the learnability, adaptability, the mindset of problem solving, design thinking, going to and kind of making sure how do you come to the breakdown of a problem, those are the kind of skills that we are looking for, and that's what we are kind of building up in the industry as well. So things are changing quite a bit in that sense in terms of what are we looking for in people, and not to forget the deep domain expertise, which comes also with experience in a particular field.
The only thing I'll add, I think it was Sal Maltman who was talking about different skills that people need. I think there's a bit of resilience that's also needed in the sense that there's so much of change that's going to happen in the years ahead, exciting for many of us. But the ones that will survive are the ones that are going to keep taking it and keep moving forward into.
Yeah, we actually did, just share a little story. We got tired of just sort of hiring, doing JDs and hiring and looking at skills. You need so much in computer science, you need this, you need that, etc. So we decided to do a bunch of hiring without doing a JD and just saying, this is the problem we want to solve. And we wrote that out quite well and said that we actually don't know what technology we're going to use. We don't know what you should be great at. We don't know what kind of coding. We didn't say we don't know. We just said how we want somebody who can figure out what's there, what skills are needed, how they would learn. So to your point, the ability to adapt, the ability to learn new things, to be agile. And we got about, for this set of about 10 positions, we got more than, I think, 800, I don't know, 750, 800 applicants. And then we used AI in some ways, and then we also used humans to be able to look at this. And the thing that struck us the most is some of the people, and we had two different kinds of people we hired, because we're also in a big way hiring and training, right? And some of them did have degrees, some of them didn't have, I mean, more advanced degrees, some didn't. And the results of that were so revealing, we would never have guessed. Some of the people who did the best came without degrees. Some of the people who did very well came with degrees, but actually didn't have jobs for some period of time because they couldn't get the job, they couldn't interview very well. So we had a real mixture of different kinds of people. We had about 60% women, which made me really happy. And it was a really interesting experiment. We actually have a paper we're releasing on this. But this kind of thing is what AI jobs is about. We don't know today what we don't know about the jobs and what kind of people we need. And I think that makes it exciting.
Thank you both. I think we'll be around if anyone has questions, but we'll take that off stage. I think everyone's quoting Naveen Chadda at this point, and so I'll add to that. Oh, sorry.
I'm a medical specialist, psychiatrist, and I'm concerned about this AI thing taking over data analysis, particularly radiology and cardiology. And our concern is that going to weaken our trainees' ability to be able to diagnose and make decisions of their own? And if all the intelligence is critical analysis been done by the AI, what's the human brain going to be, how are we going to keep strengthening our trainees, medical trainees' abilities? That's what we are worried about, is future generations of doctors. So, but there's a second point, and I would love to work with you about a particular issue I have in relation to solving the domestic violence problem. I'll talk to you about that privately.
Sure, we can take that offline and talk to her about it.
We can
yes.
take
Could
that
we?
offline.
Could we talk to you later about that? Yes. Okay.
I'll just say one comment, right? At the end of the day, it's going to depend on accountability. I think IBM did this with IBM Health, where they had deployed AI at scale at some of these medical institutions. The doctors refused to use it because at the end of the day, if they listened to the AI prompt that came in, then they were obligated to make a decision based off of that. Now, if something went wrong, who's accountable at the end of the day? So I think many medical institutions are facing that dilemma, and they are figuring out that the practitioners have to be the people who are accountable to whether they opt in for the decision, opt out for the decision. AI is more of an agent. So I think since that accountability is there, there might be a reason for people to develop these skills more. But actually, we're running out of time, so we'll take these questions offline. We're here, and thank you so much. And the quote from, what Naveen Chadda said earlier, right, just to wrap that up, I think jobs are going to be 10x'd. There's going to be some short-term pain. And there's just so much of abundance to be created. I think that's the takeaway at the workplace.
I think Naveen said 100x. So.
100x, sorry, my bad. Misquoted.
And MR is going to start a company. So we've got both that. Okay.